CM Punk got replica title duty. He had to walk backstage with his Chicago Cubs championship, so at least it fit with the character. Punk comes out. This is at the end of the first hour, and the crowd's going wild for him. This is his first appearance since the Survivor Series in this building, and repeats that he will be at WrestleMania. His elbow's not 100%, but my mouth still works, and said that some people have asked if I would host WrestleMania, and a decade ago, I would have thought that was beneath me, but I really loved for WrestleMania to be in Chicago. Says I could be a referee, and says there's a lot of people out there who like to talk about me, and mentions Pat McAfee's interview with Roman Reigns. As Pat McAfee, this Roman Reigns interview is just getting a ton of promotion here from Cody, from Punk. He says, well, Roman's earned the right to bring my name up. We'll see each other down the road. Then he brings up Seth Rollins, says we don't see eye to eye. And it's funny that he mentions my injuries when he's got 2 bad knees. I find that funny. The Rock hasn't brought up my name, maybe because he realizes from a decade ago that his arms were too short to box with God. And finally, Drew McIntyre. He says, I don't live on the internet, so I've kept my mouth quiet, and I handle things like a man, face to face or at press conferences, whichever. And with that, Drew McIntyre comes out, and immediately CM Punk stopped this stupid song and turns off Drew's theme. Now, before we get into this, what did Drew McIntyre get up to on Monday afternoon in Chicago?
Drew McIntyre did some sightseeing in the city of Chicago, to a place he's wanted to visit for quite a while. He pulled up to Mindy's Bakery and I think they're doing voting for one of the Slammy Awards as a best social media star. Give it to Drew already, because he has been so tremendously entertaining in his promos. Pulls up to Minnie's Bakery and
filmed this himself.
Closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, and just proceeds to cut a wonderful, just sort of Drew McIntyre style promo, both on Mindy's as well as, of course, the person who made the bakery famous. So he's worth a follow.
I'm so fascinated by this place and what level of fan shows up at this place now when they are in Chicago. Like, has this replaced the house from Home Alone when people go to Chicago to go check out?
I think for a wrestling fan, maybe. It's that, and maybe pro wrestling tees. What are the other landmarks?
You would think of all Mondays, this would maybe be the Monday that Mindy decides, you know what, we're gonna open up today.
You would think so. But something tells me they do well enough business on the other days of the week that they don't need to open even on a Monday when wrestling fans are in town.
Okay. I feel bad for that. Whatever the lime drink was that he was having, no love for that drink. It's all gone to Mindy's.
I don't know what drink he was having. I didn't
exactly. He was drinking all those with the cupcakes.
Was he? Oh, you mean Punk in the press conference?
Yeah, at the press conference. You don't even remember him drinking.
I don't.
He had a bag full of these cans, and he was going one by one, pounding these things back.
I think I would be pissed if I was the person who the company that made those. Woo Energy, Jack Wagner says. Are we to believe this?
It was not Woo Energy.
Oh no, it was not. Okay.
So Drew is immediately chastised for his theme song, and then called a bitch ass by CM Punk. Boy, I don't think anyone was following any language restrictions on this particular show.
Is this part of the new edict? Are people seeing, hey, Dwayne, a board member can get away with it? Why can't I? What's going on?
Wait till we get the go home promos next Monday.
Well, we got wank off.
Wank off. Got bitch ass. I mean, dude, yeah. Rock was just.
This is what happens when you fuck with The Rock.
But that's next week.
Yeah. Shitheads we got on this show.
Okay, yeah.
It's playoff season. All bets are off.
Drew reminds him of what happened the last time I was in the ring with you, and Punk comes back asking, "Are you the Scottish psychopath or an internet troll in a skirt?" And Drew says, "You better watch that. You could get canceled in this day and age for a comment like that." And Punk says that I never had to put another man's name on a shirt to sell it. And dude, Punk and Drew, they were just firing off at each other with one-liners. Drew says, Punk, you're straight edge, yet you spend all your time in rehab. And says, I used to hate you, but now you complete me. And Punk is just groaning at this comparison. Drew says he wants him to be at WrestleMania because I have always been the chosen one. And Punk responds, yeah, who chose you? Who chose you? Say his name. And dude, Drew had this look of, man, checkmate. I can't respond here. And Drew just goes quiet as Punk says, who was that paragon of good virtue that chose you? It certainly wasn't the people, and lists off different crowds. And Drew says, why don't you be the guest commentator at WrestleMania so you can watch me win the title?
So I guess what we had here was the first even what you would consider veiled reference at Vince McMahon since
not even that veiled, I thought. Like,
no, not at all. But yeah, they were certainly approaching a line that, I mean, you wouldn't expect anybody maybe except CM Punk to sort of tiptoe around. I thought it was like kind of the perfect thing for this sort of interaction. Now, this entire segment was a very loose feeling segment where like they were at times stepping over each other. And it felt,
I'll take that any day of the week over, I'm going to talk for 3 minutes while you just sit there and take all my insults. And now it's your turn. And
yeah, it felt unusual for a WWE segment because usually they feel so rehearsed, you know, they usually feel, I mean, even at their best, like, I'm not even saying like rehearsal is bad. Sometimes you really need rehearsal. But this was unusual because it was Punk cutting Drew off, while Drew, you could tell, was trying to set something up. But I think what made this work, obviously, because these two are two of the best promo guys in the entire company right now, and both are so quick-witted. Drew was able to like circle back to his point very, very well, and Punk had some great lines, great counters, and something like that Vince line really does make you wonder. I mean, how much of Punk's role in all this was just off the cuff and improvise? Because it certainly seemed to catch Drew off guard.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be the name I would want to be tiptoeing around on my television at this point to be bringing up, but it was one that, I mean, was very glaring. Seth comes out to join in on the fun, calling them children, and crowd is all behind Punk here against Rollins, and Rollins acknowledges this and starts polling the crowd if Punk should be on commentary. Crowd did not seem too interested of him being on commentary at WrestleMania. And it was
totally backfired.
Like, yeah. They were so like, they start chanting referee. And then Rollins is like, yeah, look at his counting arm. And with that, Punk gets down on the mat and counts 3 with his left arm to show he could be the referee, which to me, I thought it was like, if your payoff here is he's on commentary and you're showing him here being the ref, this was certainly a bizarre setup for this.
I mean, I think this was just kind of Punk being, more of a sort of mischievous, and like you could tell he was having a hell of a time at the response that Rollins got for that poll.
Oh, I felt Punk was improvising everything at this point because he gets up and then he walks it back stating, I think I'm too biased to be the referee. And then he just calls them dipshits. Like, this was...
He calls Drew and Seth shitheads or dipshits.
And Drew's just like, PG, brother. And Rollins thinks nothing of CM Punk. I haven't thought about you once since I was last in the ring with you. So you're a non-factor to me. I don't care what you do at WrestleMania. You can be the referee. You can narrate my finest moment on commentary because it's the closest you're ever going to get to this world title ever again. And just tells Punk to stay out of my way. So Punk agrees to be on commentary, and he says, I'm going to do what all of your gimmicks, what your wife couldn't do for you, Seth, I'm going to make you interesting at WrestleMania. And then this is like lost in it, but Drew starts reciting Stan. And I thought that might have been the fun. I laughed out loud at this guy. He's like getting into the ring, and man, he had been rehearsing this on the whole ride back from Mindy's. Listen, everyone was... I thought this was a pretty goddamn entertaining segment. I'm sure it was a train wreck for those that were maybe producing it, but I love the chaos on television. And I thought, in particular, Drew really elevated himself in this environment, and just seeing him, really just him and Punk were just great playing off one another.
I'm sure it was a train wreck for anybody trying to time the segment, because for the rest of the show, I felt
this was over 20 minutes or so. This might have gone almost 25. It was a lengthy segment.
And there's a good chance like this was planned for 20 minutes, but it was 20 minutes uninterrupted. And therefore, every other match that came after this had to kind of pay for it with like a lot more commercials than I think we're used to. But nonetheless, when you get something this good, if they can go
we
for
also
an
had
hour,
some nothing matches coming up that have like almost like a very little consequence, like when you look about your time allotment as well.
So this entire like Mania run up, I think will, in hindsight be very much remembered for The Rock. It'll be very much remembered for, I think, Cody and Seth's and Roman's sort of associations with The Rock, which really, like, The Rock at this point really does kind of feel like the nucleus of at least the success of this company. In this segment, they managed to make CM Punk, I think, feel not as big as The Rock, but like yet another like major nucleus that the other stars can circle around. And I thought it just created another must see type of like feeling for a segment on the show that didn't even involve Dwayne, didn't even involve Cody. I mean, this is like the type of energy that I think you could only get from somebody who's at the level of a CM Punk, who maybe I would have had my doubts like in some of his earlier interactions on during this comeback, but this was CM Punk like full force. This was like fully confident Phil Brooks with a live microphone, and you have no idea what he's about to say. If he sees an opportunity to throw a Vince line in there, he's going to take it, and he's going to see how the rest will react. Chicago goes against the script. He's going to play along with it and see how Rollins will react. And credit to Rollins for steering the ship back. Much like with Drew, I think the novelty of the segment from that point forward, after the poll kind of went awry, was to see how Rollins was going to be able to save it. And he didn't necessarily like take it back. He was more so like, Punk, whatever you want to do, you want to be a referee, you want to be a commentator, it doesn't matter, because whatever. And they got to the end point that they wanted to, but it was just interesting to see live TV and like an unpredictable crowd kind of go against what they probably planned initially.
So are you saying that this segment to you and I was more effective than, am I going to be at WrestleMania? What are the first four letters of Philadelphia? It's Phil.
This was a bit better than that, yeah. But that was just a tee up for this, wasn't it? This was a great segment. It was just fun, completely like captivating, and like had sort of this unpredictable energy attached to it. I think it certainly ranks up there with with the top segments of this entire WrestleMania run.
Now, I say this with the idea that we could very well hear coming out of Raw that people were absolutely furious for some of the things that were said. But I thought one of the positives, if you are a fan or a viewer, is watching this segment, and in particular Punk, just that idea of, here is a character that you don't know where they are going to go in a promo. And instead of everyone is kind of this, soldier that is following this WWE language. I mean, they have greatly gotten away from the WWE speak in a lot of their promos, but you still have it very much that, everyone's operating under this narrow view, unless you're The Rock, unless you're somebody that can go above and beyond. And I think that it just makes a lot of these segments feel more, there's an edge to them when you know that you don't know what someone is going to say and might go outside of the lines every now and then.
So I feel like that's very much dictated by who's the person saying it. How much trust can they put in a performer to improvise while sticking to time cues? I mean, obviously, if you're The Rock or if you're CM Punk, maybe time cues aren't as important. And, if you're a proven ratings draw, then they're maybe not as important. They'll maybe customize the show to you. But if you're, I'm sorry, but like just the random name.
This is probably going to be the peak of the show. This, even above the first segment. I think this 9 o'clock crossover with Punk, and for the length it went. If this isn't, it'll be number 2.
But if you're like a Ricochet, or like I don't know, even a Chad Gable, or like a Candice LeRae, and you're out there, I mean, I don't know how comfortable the performers might feel to
Candice LeRae calling Maxine a dipshit on live television.
I don't know how comfortable the performers themselves might feel without having a proper script where every word is written. I mean, there's been criticism, I think, of like, how like a Mercedes Moné promo might sound kind of WWE style in a AEW. Do we know that she doesn't prefer like talking like a WWE style promo? Like, do we know that she's comfortable improvising on her own?
There's a lot of performers who have come up not knowing any other way. I mean, that's their television experience, is being in that system. And there were some that, I mean, they would rely on scripts. Like it's not going to be, I think the vast majority prefer, like, you know, bullet points and having that freedom. And then there's others that are not at that level, that, you know, the idea of going out there for 10 minutes to talk and being given a loose guideline probably scares the hell out of them.
Yeah.